delicious spread of different things to eat. It's always great to get together and eat and chat before we speak, and then we're less nervous. At least we know you a little bit. And I hear that your favorite occupation is having rummage sales to raise money for the Kies. Is that right?
Yeah.
But I hear too it might be every other year from now on. We're really happy to be here. We know that you give a lot of support to us and to Africa University. And it's really our pleasure to come here and to talk a little bit about not just what we do, but what God is doing in this institution through many, many people. And you are part of that, through your support, through your prayer, through the cards you send to us in so many different ways. You are part of this big venture which our church has been engaged in for quite a long time now. And it really is a worthy venture to be in. So before we start, we want to teach you a little bit of Shona, which is the main language of Zimbabwe. And it's very simple, don't worry. It's just a greeting. Greeting is very important in Shona culture. It's considered very rude if you don't greet people properly. So this word here is kwaziwai.
Kwaziwai.
And kwaziwai is a greeting you use when you haven't seen somebody for quite a long time and you're just making a connection again and getting together again. So kwaziwai.
Kwaziwai.
Well, Larry and I, we've been together quite a while, but we have known since our 20s that God really wants us to be in Africa. And this is where we've been for most of our married life. And I grew up in southern Africa, so Africa is very close to my heart. I can't imagine really living and working somewhere else. Our children were all born there. I remember as a very young, I just finished training and I went to Uganda for a couple of years and was put in a very remote school. And after a few days, a man came from a village far away over the hills and he said, "You're very far away from home and you're very far from your family. While you're here, we will be your home and we will be your family." And Larry and I have found that wherever God has put us subsequent to that, we have had home and we have had family. Just like I've been hearing around the table how you love to be together, you support one another, you're at home in this church and in this community and you're with family. So we want to thank you for being part of our church family. Our children are all in the United States right now. We have 4. They were all born in southern Africa. Ben, our oldest, is in New York. We were able to visit him on our way through. Pule, our second son, has been living in North Dakota, so a climate more different to Zimbabwe you cannot imagine. But he's done really very well there. Carly, our daughter, is a student. You can see from her sweatshirt, she's at Emory. And when she chose a university, she wanted to be somewhere warmer and have a more of an international student body. And so she's been there for 2 years now. And our youngest son, Michael, is in Iowa right now. We're going to go back to him tonight. He's come with us and will stay to finish his last 2 years of high school. This has been a very difficult decision. Yes, here. He's going to go to Cedar Falls. And we just all feel that it'll be for the best, that he'll have new opportunities, but it will be very hard. And we ask that you pray for Michael and pray that as he makes this adjustment, then he will know God's strength through it all.
Well, I want to say thanks again, and I know that some of you have heard it speak before, and I'm not sure how much we can repeat, but someone said, "Don't worry, most of them are over 50, they've forgotten what you said before."
Thank God you can say the same thing again.
Yeah, there you go.
But the Shona way of saying thank you is the men will cup their hands and clap them like this. and the women cup their hands and clap them like this. So I want to repeat, James, thank you very much for hosting us today and for your continued support. Sometimes we're asked to speak on a Sunday morning, and because I've been in Zimbabwe since '94, it's just my natural tendency to clap my hands like this to say thank you at the end of the sermon. But sometimes I forget to tell them what that is, and they think I'm asking for a standing ovation. Many people have a hard time remembering Africa's geography. So we like to give just a very quick revision. And everybody knows that Egypt is way up in the north, and that's where the pyramids are. And Nelson Mandela was living and leading in South Africa. And the Lion King was somewhere in East Africa, Kenya, Tanzania. And then everywhere else in Africa seems to just be sand and desert and monkeys and jungle, and people have a hard time with that. But Zimbabwe is down here in the southeast corner of the continent. And Iraq, of course, is not even part of Africa. That is in the Middle East. Zimbabwe is probably best known for Victoria Falls. And if you come to visit us, you should try and schedule a trip to Victoria Falls as well, and to some of the game parks. We don't have a lot of large animals, wild animals near us, but we have about 5 hours drive to get to where we can camp among the elephants. And when we fly into and out of Zimbabwe, we'll go to the capital, and they have a very nice airport there with a number of international airlines that connect. Then we actually live outside of the city of Mutare, and the border is just a hop, skip, and away to get to Mozambique. And that's where Africa University is. That's not a missionary, that's a monkey. Much of Africa is rural, but Zimbabwe, like many other African countries, actually has about half of the population living in cities. And the city of Mutare is 10 miles away from the campus, and you can see the downtown area, you can see the terrain. So we have access to most things that we need to buy. We can buy groceries, we can buy clothes, we can buy spare parts for our cars and so on. Most of the people in cities will live in brick houses, similar to this. But if you go to the rural areas, you'll often see people molding their own bricks, and then they will hire people to build their huts for them with the grassroots. So this is a very common sight outside of the city, although many people outside the city also live in brick houses. And it's very common not to have indoor plumbing, especially in the rural areas. So people will, if they're well off, they will have their own well, but many people will share in communal sources of water. Of course, the children then, that'll be one of their tasks, to help carry water to the household. And men, when you cook for your wives, this is probably what you'll be using, a three-legged pot, cast iron pot. But this is a more typical scene. This was actually taken in Botswana, but it could have been taken in Zimbabwe, where people used a lot of firewood for cooking over an open fire in these cast iron pots. Zimbabwe at the moment has 80% unemployment. So most families are struggling to make ends meet, and they often enlist the help of the children. And if they have something that can be sold, then you will see people standing along the side of the road selling what they have. In this case, there are mangoes. I don't know if your local Hy-Vee has mangoes this big or this tasty. And we usually buy our tomatoes from people who are selling them alongside of the road. Sometimes there will be quite a crowd, and they all come and want to convince you that theirs are the best ones. And we have lots of avocados as well. one of these avocados can feed a whole family.
Oh. Huge.
But we live on the campus of African University in a relatively privileged lifestyle, I would say, because we have running water. We have pretty much 100% of the time we have electricity. We live in a brick house. This picture of the campus was taken in December. That's when our rainy season begins. And because we're south of the equator, that's when the summer is. And that's when we do most of our crop planting. This hill is where African University had its beginnings, because the land that you see here, and everywhere you can see from that hill, in the 1890s belonged to white farmers who had been recruited by Cecil Rhodes to come and settle the area. They wanted to build a train track to the business community that was right here, but because of the terrain, they couldn't. So they picked up the whole town and moved it 10 miles to the present place of Matai. Then there's a bishop from Illinois named Joseph Hartzell who was at the top of this mountain, and he was praying, and as he prayed he had a vision of African children walking to the base of the mountain. So he went to Cecil Rhodes and asked for land, and he was given 15,000 acres.
Oh, wow.
They later traded 12,000 acres for land in other parts of the country, and they stayed with 3,000 acres. In 1988, when the General Conference approved the idea of establishing a university on the continent of Africa, then the Zimbabwe United Methodist Church said, we've got the perfect place. So I don't know what was in Bishop Hartzell's original vision, how big those kids were. But at first, for a long time, there was a grade school and a high school on the mission, but now there are African children from all over Africa who are going to school at the base of that mountain. 60% of them are Zimbabwean. Like this young woman who was in one of my agriculture classes, and she was harvesting from a plot of corn that she had planted and taken care of herself. You can imagine how excited she and her parents were on graduation day, because she was first-generation college graduate. We recognize, of course, that everybody doesn't need to go to college. We know that there are many jobs and occupations that don't require a degree, but are still an important part of the community and the economy. But we also know that there are many occupations that need the specialized training that a university can provide. So it's exciting to us when we can see these young people coming and being that first generation with access to that type of training. Well, Gertrude was one of the 60% of Zimbabweans, but Africa is a big place, and we have normally around 27 different countries that are represented in our student body. Many of them, the students, will come from English-speaking countries like Zambia and South Africa, Malawi, Ethiopia, Nigeria, and the new country of South Sudan. So when they come, they generally have a good command of English. But there are other countries that speak Portuguese as the colonial language. So those coming from Mozambique and Angola, they come speaking Portuguese. Maybe they have a little bit of English. And where Mickey was working in the Congo, they're speaking French, as well as a number of other countries. So when these children come, they usually have to learn English before they can learn in whatever program they're beginning in.
I get used to this very colourful bunch of students every day, and it really is an interesting experience that I have interacting with these people from different countries. They're very energetic, they're very lively, they're all very different. We tend to sort of bundle all of Africa's people together, but cultures are so different, and they have to learn to get together and learn together, play together, And this is one of the beauties of the institution, is that people are learning to get along, working side by side with people from different countries. And if there's anything that the continent of Africa needs right now, it's unity amongst its people. So they spend a year in this class, and we do a lot of different kinds of lessons just to get them speaking, just to get them familiar with it. And then, of course, they need a whole lot more to be able to study in it later. Our activities include just becoming familiar with the computer, which many of the students don't come with this kind of skill. So that's another benefit that they receive. But I remember a story that one student told me. He was in my class quite a long time ago, and he came to me and he said, well, I'm from the Congo, I'm from the DRC, and when I came to Africa University, we were fighting with people from Burundi, and they were always my enemies. But in that class, I sat next to a Burundian student, and we spent the year together learning about one another, and when I had finished, he was my friend. And I think this is the kind of testimony that Africa University can give to its supporters.
I'm a farm boy, and I grew up in northeast Iowa. So if you're wondering about my accent, it's the Buchanan County accent. Actually, I went as a Peace Corps volunteer to Botswana in 1976, and the kids didn't understand my Midwestern accent. So I intentionally changed the way I pronounced words to make it easier for them to understand me. So I was kind of corrupted. Jane has a British passport, so she was born corrupted. But having grown up on a farm, the first school where I was teaching didn't need a biology teacher, but they said, well, you have a background in farming, so you can teach agriculture. And I ended up teaching biology and agriculture and found out that I preferred teaching agriculture. The classes that I teach now, one of our main goals is to give them the basic fundamentals of farming. And we have lots of kids who grew up in the city and don't have any more experience with handling livestock and driving tractors than the typical kid in Clinton, who might have a relative or might never have been on a farm. But some of these kids will go out and actually become farm managers. Others will become agribusinessmen. So we want to give them a solid basis for making decisions when they go out. So they learn how to milk cows. Every one of my students milks cows by hand. They take care of pigs. They learn how to slaughter chickens and take care of chickens. And these experiences not only give them some skills, but it gives them confidence in learning more skills and learning new skills. Of course, no school can teach kids everything they need to know. But what we hope we provide them with is to know how to learn and to enjoy what they're doing, so if they do want to learn more. Our crops are very similar to what you see in Iowa. We have a lot of corn. We also grow a lot of potatoes, and we can grow potatoes most of the year because in the winter it gets down to about 27, 28 at night. And we do have to be aware of frost, and if we are careful where we plant our potatoes, we can escape that frost. We do have irrigation. They also take ornamental and edible horticulture classes. These are mulberry trees. And on the campus, we try to give them not only their skills, but we try to teach with a Christian perspective. And all students are required to take a course in ethics so that they get some of that perspective. And we have a chapel on Wednesday morning. If you've ever heard the Africa University Choir, we get to hear them almost every week. My role as technical advisor for the farm involves working with the farm manager, Mr. Mpofu, and sometimes we meet every day, Sometimes we meet once a week and we look at what's happening, what problems there are, and how can we solve them together. I'm also involved in raising funds for equipment. I think you recognize this color down there. Most of the people in the white people in that picture were from Bettendorf and Davenport, and they come on a work team the day that this hill arrived. And at the moment, we're raising money for a center pivot so that we can irrigate more efficiently, because we want to make sure that all the equipment that we have, it works and it's appropriate. This is a picture taken of our next door neighbor who has corn on the center pivot. So we want to make sure that our students are also exposed to this technology. Some of them will end up working on farms that have this. Others will end up as extension officers where the people are still plowing with cattle or with donkeys. But they'll be going to very different environments, so we hope that the basic fundamentals will prepare them for wherever they go.
One of the things I like about Clinton is that it's a little bit hilly. And you can see from our slides that we're used to being in a place that's very hilly. And when I woke up this morning and I was thinking about a woman who had come to me, her husband had had an accident and he was in quite a bad way. And she said, yeah, we got together as a community and we went up the mountain to pray at 3 a.m. And this is what women do. The United Methodist women are very serious in their prayer life. And you will often find them, if there's an issue in the community, they'll be up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., up the mountain to pray. And at night on campus, our students from the DRC, they climb a small hill behind the university, and their singing is carried all over the valley. It's really beautiful. We can hear it from our house. They just sing their hearts out, and if you go early in the morning, they're up there praying. So I just wondered where people here go if they want to pray. There are, if you go down to the river. Wonderful. We thought about this verse, and we like it because it says a lot to us about mission. Paul was a missionary, and his church in Corinth was part of his responsibility. And he said to them, your very lives are a letter that anyone can read by just looking at you. Christ himself wrote it, not with ink, but with the Holy Spirit. And we are all those letters. We perhaps don't always realize it, but every choice we make, everything we do, everything we say to those around us is a reflection of Christ in us. And what we say and what we do is very important when we're with the community, because it either strengthens the kingdom or detracts from it. And one of the very exciting things that's happened at Africa University is that our young students have come forward and said, we want to go into mission. I'm from Zimbabwe, but I want to go to Europe to take the word of God. Or I'm from the Congo and I have a calling, I feel a calling to go to the Ivory Coast. And this is something that is quite recent. Africa University is no longer just receiving missionaries or people in mission from the United States, but it is itself training and fostering this mission spirit amongst its students. So mission takes place in many countries, of course, and in many different ways. We have missionaries from everywhere going to everywhere, and our global mission board takes on this little slogan as you see it there, and we have people in mission all over the world who are United Methodists. So mission, we have young people coming from the United States and volunteer in mission groups. They get to know our students and work alongside them in various projects, an environmental project here. they come and preach and bring the gospel in that way. And we have our own students, as I've said, coming forward and wanting to go into training to be missionaries throughout the world. And at a service recently in Harare, the capital, many of our young graduates were commissioned to do just that. And then we have people who want to go into full-term mission. Jean-Claude is a pastor. He came into our English class with barely a word of English. We had to start right at the beginning. And he later graduated with a master's at Africa University, and he and his family are in the Ivory Coast now. It's a predominantly Muslim country, and it's not without challenge and danger that he and his wife go into very remote areas and talk to people about Jesus and end up establishing communities and churches there. So I think that is just a wonderful thing that God is doing, giving this spirit of wanting to take his gospel into the rest of Africa and beyond. And Africa University is like a bit like a publishing house, sending out these letters that have been formed and written all along as the students have been there.
There's a story of a missionary who went to Zimbabwe, and he was learning the local language of Shona, and he was determined to preach in Shona. So it wasn't very long, and then his time came, and he wasn't fluent yet. And what he wanted to say was, I want to preach the gospel. The word for preach, to preach in Shona is kupariza. Unfortunately for him, there's a similar word, kuparaza, that means to destroy. And it's like what habit he got them mixed up. So he ended up saying, I want to destroy the gospel. But you might have heard a similar story, a connected story of a man who wanted to evangelize his next door neighbor. So he went and he took a Bible to next door and knocked on the door, and when his neighbor answered, he said, I've come to give you this Bible, and you can read it and learn how God loves you and how he can help make you a more loving person. And the neighbor said, I don't need that Bible. I have you. I can watch you. And if I see that by your following what is taught in that book makes you a better person, helps you relate to people better, makes you more generous, then I'll call you back. Then you can bring that book and I'll read it. But if your life is one that makes me think there's no need for me to search in that book for answers, because obviously he or she has not found them, then I don't see the need for it. So I think it's a lesson for all of us, whether we are here in Clinton or Illinois or Zimbabwe or wherever, that we are called on to preach the gospel in the way we live our lives. And if we want to share our faith with others, then the first step is to have a life that others will see God is working through us. Because if we are living our lives in love, then we're going to be kupariza. If we are not, people will say, we'll say the opposite. We are paraza. So we thank you again for the chance to share with you. We thank you again for being supportive of us, and also for Africa University. And we hope that as we are representing you, that you can be effective in preaching the gospel here in your own town. And we also thank you that you are part of the letters that are being written as Africa University graduates are going out throughout the continent and the rest of the world preaching the gospel on our behalf. Thank you.